My name is Allie Osborne, and I have been a realtor in Cincinnati for 3 years. Um, I got into this business because I was at a really interesting time in my life where my kids were getting older and I had a little more freedom to run around. And I've always been interested in real estate, both buying and selling our own personal homes. My family did rental properties in Northern Ohio where I grew up. And so it's been a passion of mine. Really forever. And so it was just the right time to get into it. And I'm very happy that I did.
And how long have you been an agent?
I've been an agent in Cincinnati for 3 years.
Great. And we'll jump right in. How did you hear about Seller Shield?
So Seller Shield was recommended to me by or through my brokerage. We have a really wonderful training program at my brokerage, and I was given a field trainer who allowed me to kind of follow his ways and learn from him and his experience. And he recommended this as a tool that I incorporate into my listings, as a efficient way for the sellers to fill out their disclosure forms. And then also in a way that worked really well with the other types of digital, signatures and processes that we had. And it also was really convenient for all of his sellers. They enjoyed it using the program. And so I kind of just started doing it because he told me to,
Mhm.
and it's worked out really well for me.
Great. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind just thinking about with your hat on as an agent representing home sellers and buyers, like how does Seller Shield work and where does it fit into the process for you?
So Seller Shield for me and with my clients, it's when I have a listing and we're talking through all of the documentations that we're going to need. The property disclosure is one that is a necessary form. Um, I tell them that I will be emailing them a link to be able to fill that out electronically. And it's a really simple platform that kind of gives them help along the way if they have questions about what a specific um, question means or things like that. So it's almost kind of like a TurboTax kind of feeling for filling out your property disclosures. Um, and has that help if I wasn't going to be sitting right next to them while they were filling it out. And then so I send them the link for the forms. They filled them all out. And then it emails right back to my inbox. I put them in dot loop and we're good to go.
And have you ever gotten any feedback from, well, I guess first, how many transactions have you used the disclosure platform on? And have you gotten any feedback from the seller on what it's like to use the tool from their perspective?
Yeah, I'll be honest, as a newer agent, I haven't listed a bunch. But the ones that I have used it on, I would probably say we've used it 4 times in the last year. And what I noticed about how my disclosures were filled out or my clients' disclosures were filled out versus maybe one that was just on the standard form and filled out by hand, it allowed my clients to have that extra space to maybe expand on the issue at hand that they were disclosing. I think it allowed them to give the information that they wanted to give and not be bound to 2 lines. And in this market where we're in, where people are doing some really interesting things with inspections, I think being able to disclose as much as you need to know, then not bound by 2 lines, is really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There's a lot of interesting market trends that we're seeing that I think we've noticed a huge rise in the amount of disclosure disputes that are coming up because the market's hot and people are trying to get
Yeah.
homes.
Interesting as one way to describe the choices that are being made.
Yeah, it's definitely not the recommended path in many cases. So, um, from your perspective, you had a colleague that suggested you use Seller Shield. What was the onboarding process like for you? Was this easy to integrate into your workflow? Did it require, a lot of training? How was the process for you to start extending this capability to the home sellers you represent?
I thought it was very easy. I don't think there was any onboarding or training of how the program worked, to be honest. I think he just sent me the link. I created the account, I go online, fill in my client's email, say which forms they got it, what state we're in, all the things, and it just sends off. So I don't think it's difficult to use at all, even without maybe a formal onboarding or even video. I was able to kind of just, it was very intuitive. And I haven't had any feedback from my clients that they weren't able to access the form or fill it out. And I haven't had any issues with it getting back to me either.
That's great. Awesome. And what is the cost to you to use this?
Zero, I think. I think it's paid through my brokerage.
It was a
If it
trick
is,
question. It is free
is it
for
free?
it's
Okay.
free for agents and brokers. It's a trick question.
I was like, oh, I don't know.
Um, yeah, so it sounds like you had a great experience. Are there any examples on when Seller's Shield or the home sale legal protection that's offered to a home seller has come in handy? Can you give us an example of something that you've noticed in the field?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did have a seller need to take advantage of the legal protection that Seller Shield provides. It was a tricky situation. They were selling their home, moving out of state, uh, older home. They had done a lot of work to it in the 15 years that they lived there. And they used Seller Shield to fill out the disclosure. And they were able to be very thorough and accurate in the disclosures. There was a basement crack that had been filled, and that was what the homeowner stated on the disclosure, that there was a basement, there was a crack in, whatever corner of the basement, and it had been repaired on such and such date, and there hadn't been any water intrusion since on the disclosure. Um, Super hot market, buyers have to do things, you know, to get the house. The inspection was waived. Now, that I will also say, this crack was not behind any drywall. It was very much a latent defect that you could see. But they did waive the inspection. And about 6 months after the purchase of the home, the buyers reached out to the sellers at their new address and said that they felt that they had been misled in how the crack was repaired and that it was getting water in now. Um, and they threatened legal action with that. And so my buyer or sellers called me frantic, very worried. And I said, but you got Seller Shield, like call them. That's your first call. And they were, we went back and forth, like, but we told them there was a crack. We never, we said we repaired it. There wasn't any water. I mean, so they were just so frustrated that they were being threatened with this lawsuit. And the amount of money that the buyers were asking for was not a small amount. And so they called Seller Shield, and attorney called them back very quickly and kind of talked them through the situation, what their options were, and explained the coverage to them. And they were able to get it worked out. The attorney sent correspondence back to the buyers on the seller's behalf. They had a handful of phone conversations. Definitely, I don't know the total amount of billable hours that happened during this transaction, but the attorney was able to come to a settlement outside of litigation. And there was an NDA involved, so I don't know the details of how that all worked out, but they were able to come to a resolution. And it was my understanding from the sellers that the attorney made sure that me as the agent and the brokerage were also not able to be held liable for any further legal action related to this property.
Wow, what a great story. I feel like, we offer home sale legal protection to hopefully never have to use it. But when it does happen, it's great to have that sort of security blanket. So I guess given that experience, how likely are you to recommend this to clients going forward? Is this a standard part of when you're, having a listing conversation with a potential home seller, and this is part of it, given that experience? Can you tell us a little bit more about it since you've seen it in action?
Yeah, this has absolutely become part of my standard listing presentation in discussing the types of forms and disclosures that are going to be needed. I use, when we're talking about the property disclosure, I let them know that that's going to be coming from Seller Shield, and that Seller Shield is a company that creates a really seamless, easy process for them to fill out the form electronically, but then also offers legal protection, and insurance legal protection versus any, or for any lawsuits that may come, and that it's optional, that they can still fill out the form through Seller Shield, whether they get the added insurance or not, but that the cost of the insurance in, in comparison to the amount of coverage that it provides is really a great idea, for them, and that it can be paid out of proceeds at closing. So it's not something that they have to pay for right now. It's, when they get that check at the end of the day, it's just another line item that title can take care of.
Awesome. And this is my last question. So if you were talking to a colleague or a peer realtor, given your experience, what would you tell them about Seller's Shield if they were evaluating, using this disclosure platform as part of their process?
I've recommended Seller Shield to all the agents in my office, and especially after having to use it and see, the full process of, a client being threatened with litigation and having to use their coverage, uh, and how it worked out really well for them. They were happy with the process. I recommended it to everyone in my office, and we've talked about it. And I definitely think there have been agents in my office that have now integrated this into their process. Uh, there's really just, I don't see any reason not to. It puts the ball in the seller's court. If they want to buy the protection, they can, but they need the form filled out one way or the other. And so just sending them to Seller Shield to at least fill out the form and then understand that there is protection available to them, I think is invaluable to, to the process and to just protecting my clients.